The town of Hollow's Edge had long been known for its thick, murky swamps. The dense, fog-covered wetlands stretched for miles beyond the outskirts of town, teeming with wildlife and vegetation. But no one dared venture too deep. The locals whispered of strange things lurking in the swamp, creatures that had lived there long before the town existed, waiting in the darkness. Some said the swamp was cursed. Others believed it was alive, a living, breathing entity, filled with forgotten horrors. Mira had heard these stories all her life. Growing up in Hollow's Edge, she had always been drawn to the swamp, its quiet mystery and isolation calling to her. She would often stand at its edge, gazing into the mist, wondering what lay beyond the murky waters and twisted roots. But even she, with all her curiosity, had never dared to venture far. That was until the night she lost her dog, Luna. Luna was a small, energetic terrier who loved to explore. One evening, as Mira walked along the edge of the swamp, Luna darted off into the fog, chasing something unseen. Mira called out to her, but the dog had already disappeared into the thick underbrush. "Luna!" Mira shouted, her voice echoing faintly in the damp air. The swamp swallowed the sound, leaving only the soft rustling of leaves and the faint croak of distant frogs. Panic settled in as the minutes passed. Luna still hadn't returned, and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. The fog seemed to grow denser, swirling around Myra's ankles like cold fingers. She had no choice. She had to go after her. Armed with only a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, Mira stepped into the swamp. The ground beneath her feet was soft and squelched with each step. She could smell the wet earth and decaying plants, the thick scent clinging to her skin. The further she walked, the quieter it became. The usual sounds of crickets and birds faded, replaced by an oppressive silence. "Luna," she called again, her voice wavering. The fog was so thick now that she could barely see her hand in front of her face. She shivered, not from the cold, but from the sense that she was being watched. The swamp felt alive, like it was breathing with her, watching her every move. A sudden noise made her freeze. It was a soft splash, like something moving in the water nearby. She turned her flashlight towards the sound, but the beam barely penetrated the mist. She could just make out the shape of something in the water, something large and slow-moving. Her heart raced. Was it an animal? A log? As she squinted through the fog, the shape seemed to shift. It wasn't an animal, and it definitely wasn't a log. It was something humanoid. Its skin was dark and slick, like it was covered in mud or algae, and it moved with an unnatural, jerking motion. Stumbling backwards, the creature turned towards her. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless head with empty holes where eyes should have been. Its arms were long and twisted, its fingers ending in sharp, claw-like nails. It moved through the water effortlessly, despite its grotesque form, as if it were part of the swamp itself. Myra's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. The creature slowly advanced, the water rippling around it as it came closer and closer. Just when she thought she was done for, a faint bark pierced the silence. The dog's bark snapped her out of her paralysis. She whirled around, following the sound of her dog's barking, her feet slipping on the slick mud as she ran. Behind her, she could hear the creature splashing through the water, its heavy footsteps following close behind. Her heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted through the fog, desperate to find Luna, desperate to escape. Suddenly, she tripped over something soft and wet. She tumbled to the ground, her flashlight skidding out of her hand. Panic surged through her as she scrambled to her feet, grabbing for the light. When she shone in front of her, what she saw made her stomach turn. It was a body, or at least what was left of one. The corpse was bloated and discolored, half submerged in the muddy water. Its face was frozen with a look of pure terror, its eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. Mira recoiled, nearly dropping the flashlight again. The swamp was littered with these bodies, as if the swamp itself had consumed them. A soft, rasping whisper filled the air, making her blood run cold. "Mira, The voice grew louder, echoing through the fog. She could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet, like the swamp was moving, alive. The fog seemed to pulse, swirling around her in a dance of shadows and whispers. Then, through the fog, she saw her. Luna was standing just ahead, her small body trembling, her eyes wide with fear. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her, half hidden in the mist, was another figure, a tall, slender figure, its skin slick with swamp water, its hollow eyes fixed on Mira. It reached out a long, clawed hand, beckoning her forward. Mira! Myra's legs burned as she sprinted towards the faint outline of trees in the distance, the edge of the swamp. Luna's bark grew louder, and Mira pushed harder, ignoring the pain. Behind her, the creature let out a low growl, but she didn't dare look back. And she knew that one day, the swamp would come for her again.